Going to the cloud.
Either or. Either or. It says it's being recorded, so
yes,
we're good.
Off you go.
Okay, awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Ross, my dear friend, not just colleague. I think for all these years. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you. I hope you're enjoying this wonderful day, this wonderful sunny day. My name is Dr. Faye Hubaki. Please call me Faye. The title just gives us the opportunity to do what we can to help you when it comes to psychology, but I'm a psychologist at the University of Chicago, and I also do some ethics work, research and education and that. So long time, for those of you that don't know me, long time devotee of Gilda's. I've worked with Kathleen Boss probably almost 15 years when I was a resident way back when at the Veterans Affairs. So I'm so delighted to be here with you, honor and a pleasure. And thank you also for being here with us. This is the first step towards your well-being is simply by you being here and present. So thank you very much. So this is week 2. Week 1 was about 2 weeks back, but we will talk about some of the core strategies. So in case you were unavailable, that's okay. We will learn it directly today, and everything will also be recorded. So never fear, as we say. Okay, so our objectives really quick is to review and check in on your second week of mindfulness exercises, noticing difference between thinking and the direct awareness of the experience and how often we're captured really by these authentic patterns of reacting. That's today. We're going to refocus a little bit about the body scan, a little bit about mindful breathing. We're going to talk about aversion and thoughts. So lots to do. If we can't get through everything today, don't worry. We will always revisit a lot of it at the next session. So we're going to extend some new learning this week. Here's our mindfulness meditation to get us in the groove, so to speak. So let's begin the session by a body scan, okay? So even if you have not heard anything about mindfulness, the body scan is a moment for us to begin and to reconnect and just be present in this moment. So let us begin by bringing your attention into your body. And close your eyes. You can close them if you're uncomfortable with that, but we know that kind of helps to induce a deeper sense of relaxation by closing your eyes. And you can notice your body that's seated wherever you're seated, simply feeling the weight of your body on the chair, on the floor, and simply take a few deep breaths. Take a few deep breaths. And as you take a deep breath, bring in more oxygen, enlivening the body. Have a sense of relaxing more deeply. You can notice your feet on the floor. Notice the sensations of your feet towards the floor. The weight, the pressure, the vibration, and heat. You can notice your legs against the chair. Pressure, pulsing, heaviness. Notice your back against the chair. And bring your attention into your stomach area. Is your stomach tense or tight? Take a breath. Notice your hands. Are your hands tense or tight? See if you can allow them to loosen. Notice your arms. Do you feel any sensation in your arms? Let your shoulders simply be loose. Notice your neck and throat. Let them be soft. Simply relax. Soften your jaw. Allow your face and facial muscles to be soft. And notice your whole body present. take one more breath. Be aware of your whole body as best as you can. Simply take a breath. And when you are ready, slowly open your eyes and return to our virtual environment. So that's our body scan. I always like to start the session off usually with a body scan and end also with some exercises as well. But just to, maybe we're feeling some tension or hurriedness to even simply get online. And so that was our moment of attention and presence, just by feeling what our bodies were feeling, what thoughts were present, and to sort of loosen that and just focus on this moment of being together today. So our check-in is, what were some of the challenges that you may have faced from last week? Challenges are very common. Remember, when we begin the mindfulness practice, especially in a group setting, sometimes it's very difficult in session to do things. And even when you're home with the busyness of the days, etc., really important for you to just try to go back again. Not to be a tough judge. So recognizing that it's going to be highlighted through more practice with body scan and mindful breathing. If there are challenges that you've faced and you want to mention that, now would be the time, if that's okay. And if not, we can just continue.
Hi, I'm Louise.
Hi, Louise. Hi, Louise.
And I have to say that this really helped me a lot when I was going through chemo. But what I do find is sometimes I think about other things while I'm trying to relax my body. So it I don't know how to shut that part of myself off.
Yeah, and that's very, very common. Thank you so very much for telling us your experience. That is really, really common. In fact, that's the toughest part in the beginning, is to really control those thoughts. So what's important is that when those thoughts come, just acknowledge that thought. Okay, I'm thinking about my grocery list, but right now, I recognize you, grocery list, but right now I'm going to be thinking about chemo. I'm going to be thinking about just myself, my being, my breath. So again, when that thought comes into play, when is my doctor going to come to visit me during chemo? Recognize that doctor will be coming. I recognize this thought. I'm going to go back to my breathing. And again, that's going to take time and practice, but it'll happen. It'll happen over time if you just keep practicing and you're pretty diligent about those thoughts. So when that thought comes, whatever that thought is, say it. Almost you could even say it out loud, if not, kind of softly, mentally. Acknowledge it, and then just go back to the breathing and the body scan and that. So, and maybe some of these exercises today or these thoughts that we have that will help. Will that sound okay? We can maybe go through. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, anyone else? Thank you so much, Louise. That was wonderful. So, example of challenges. I kept thinking, am I doing this right? It's really hard. I can't relax. Why isn't anything happening? And again, a lot of these exercises will be in the workbook. We'll send that to you later today. I'll send it to Ross to make sure that everyone gets it, including some of the audio files. But this is a very, very common example of one of the challenges that folks experience. And that's very common. All of these are just different forms of judging ourselves, judging, doing mind wheeling, taking over the action as best as you can. Just simply say, I'm judging. Gently to yourself, bring the attention back to the region of the body. For example, your hands, your shoulders. Like I get really tight in my shoulders and my neck when I'm stressed or whatever. So just recognizing that the instructions are focusing in on that moment. And there really is no right way for the body scan to be when it comes to mindfulness. Our experience is our experience, however that may be. And that's actually the wonder of mindfulness, is that we don't judge, versus some of the other formal meditations. There might be some preconceived judgments. in that. Other benefits or challenges, it was amazing. I felt so relaxed as if parts of my body were simply fading away. It was simply wonderful, as if I was weighing nothing at all. And that's absolutely wonderful. When this happens, and recognizing this can take time, it gives us confidence that we have the possibilities for peace and are calm within ourselves. It's really helpful also to be careful about expecting or wishing for this next time. It can happen one time, and then certainly it may not happen the second time. And then, although the relaxation is not the point of the body scan, it's really fine to enjoy it if it happens. Really, the aim of this body scan isn't to strive for relaxation or for any other state. It doesn't matter what the sensations you have or that you're becoming aware of. The most significant thing is that you do the best that you can. You tune into the direction and the sense of the body rather than getting entangled and thinking about it. Another challenge, I found myself in a flood of tears. I simply just couldn't understand. And when we tune into the sensations of the body, we may connect with emotions that at some time the mind may not choose to fully experience. So although this can be very startling, the willingness to allow such feelings and present can be profoundly healing. To that extent, you can see that it's possible to continue to follow the instructions, simply focus on the sensations of the moment. That way you steady yourselves with the strong emotions that are present, okay? So if you find yourself repeatedly reconnecting with overwhelming emotions and feelings from past traumatic experience, you find memories of extreme distressing events that are coming back, not simply just the cancer experience, but even prior to that, it's very wise to seek further professional help from a mindfulness instructor if you have one, your regular therapist, or certainly an experienced counselor or therapist. Anyone at Gilda's would do as well, if not in a hospital. So what's the remedy? One of the remedies to these kind of thoughts, especially when you're doing it in the course of the day, outside of the cancer setting, but certainly even in the setting, the treatment setting, focus on one routine activity that you do. Maybe it's simply just sitting, being present in the chemotherapy chair or in the doctor's chair, and just, really trying to practice each time you're in that chemo chair, each time you sit down in that physician's office to practice. Daily activities are taking out the garbage, driving the car, really choosing to leave the house, entering the house, going upstairs, downstairs, waking in the morning, showering. Certainly you see here's a whole host, getting dressed, making coffee, and washing the dishes. So you may say, I'm not really sure what deliberate awareness feels like. What should I pay attention to? And it's really good to say that when you're, say, showering is going to be an example. Pay your whole attention to the sensation of that water, of that showering experience. Your skin, as the water touches your skin, that warmth of the water, the shampoo or soap, the smell of it, really making it almost ritualistic, the sound of the water, the shifting of the muscles and the arms, the way the water actually touches your body, hits your body, the way you wash your body. So recognizing, we talked a lot last week about autopilot, and on autopilot, it's as if we are way somewhere else, right? It's just automatic. But where do we go? Remember, there might be that example of how you're driving, maybe driving home from work or from the hospital, and you don't even know how you got home because there's just so much to think about. It's just this automatic pilot sensation. And so we're lost in that thinking of one form or another. Specifically, we're planning, we're remembering, we're daydreaming, and that thinking becomes a problem when it takes over. We're no longer just thinking, but we're lost in thought. We've passed a tipping point, no longer living in the world, we're living in our heads. And that fix is an exercise of turning toward. Recognizing the fact, this is a slide from last week, that awareness, stress, automatic pilot, that mindfulness helps us to truly step out of that habitual automatic pilot mode. We do lots of things automatically as we express. We don't even really remember it. They can be helpful doing these things automatically, but sometimes it's just too many things to pay attention to. But if we're living our lives in this automatic pilot, one thing to the next, we're not even noticing what we should expect. We're not living maybe our most authentic lives that we can live. So that turn forward exercise is really about thinking about. So let's just take a minute or two outside of this virtual environment to think about your feet without even looking at them. What are the thoughts arise when you bring to your mind about your feet? There might be thoughts of liking or disliking, wanting them to be different, thoughts of where they've taken you, your problems that they've caused you, thoughts of what? There's no need to control your thinking in any way. Just let them think or unfold very naturally. Take your time. Give yourself a minute or two to think about your feet. And if it's tough to do now, try to do this outside of this virtual environment that we're in. And when we tune in directly, we're going to next bring our awareness right into the feet without looking at them. We're allowing that awareness to sink into, to fill your feet from inside to outside, from the bones right out to the skin itself, sensing the bones, sensing the feet, feeling the sensations of the touch on the skin, the sensations of the soles of the feet, the sense of touch, the sense of pressure, the contact of the feet that's touching the floor. We explore that boundary between our feet and the floor. Now clench your toes a little bit, drawing them in as close as you can, paying attention to the physical sensations in the toes, the sole of each foot, directly sensing the pressure in the toes, feeling the tightness in the muscles, the flux and flow of body sensations, the feet, the ankles, and the legs. And now simply ease the grip of the toes. The awareness in your feet, noticing the changes and the sensations of the feet and the toes as they relax. And finally, before you change the position, take a few moments to simply get a sense of your body as a whole, sitting there. Okay, and so that might be tough a little bit with neuropathy. We recognize the fact that there's lots of different feelings with neuropathy. Do what you can with the feet. It is actually a very good technique for neuropathy to relax the feet, especially if you have it in your. So try that exercise now during the course of the week. Now, through mindfulness, we also discover another way of knowing, a quiet voice that's usually very drowned out by the louder shouts of our thinking. And it's in that direct relating to experience that we're simply aware of our experience at the moment. The knowing that is an awareness itself. When we mindfully encounter something unpleasant rather than the ideas about it, when we relate to it as an experience, sensing it, feeling it, there's a beautiful simplicity in this knowing. It really allows us to connect immediately with a greater freedom and ease. So this week, you're invited to practice this recognizing, right? When you become, what are your thoughts? Then reconnecting it with direct mindful knowing of these experiences and these feelings. Each time you notice that the mind has wandered off, it offers an opportunity of practicing that shifting of living in your head to directly sensing your body, okay? That hidden power of thinking, the thoughts and the feelings, to truly understand the liberating power of that shift from one way of knowing to the next. Let's look more closely at why knowing by thinking can be such a problem, right? And here's another exercise of walking down the street. So certainly we're in this virtual sitting environment, but if you can settle into a comfortable position, and when you're ready, we're going to read through this next scenario. And we're just going to take a minute or two to imagine the scene as vividly as we can. We may find it helpful to close our eyes, take all the time that you need, see if it's possible to simply engage fully in the imagined scene as best as you can. So here's our exercise. So you're walking down a familiar street. and you see somebody you know on the other side of the street. You smile and wave. That person makes no response, no eye contact, just doesn't seem to notice you and walks past you without any sign of recognizing your existence. Imagine that scene now. What are the thoughts and the feelings that went through your mind? So some of you may first ask, what's the difference between a thought and a feeling? If we're thinking about that walking scenario, there's certainly both aspects of the inner experience. So the difference can be the difference between the both can be really challenging to put into words. But we know that thoughts are what we often experience as words and sentences through our mind, or as pictures or images that are fairly easy to describe with the words. Versus feelings are more like sensations or shifts in that emotional state that we experience directly. And there's a table that will show us some typical responses to this exercise, and it'll make things a lot clearer, hopefully. So typical thoughts that a lot of folks had reported based on Zendale's book and interviews. So for example, Carol said, he didn't even acknowledge me. Did I upset him? So that was a very worried response. Versus Jake thought, I wonder now what happened. Might feel very curious, kind of inquisitive. A lot of questions arose. Sharon felt, she just doesn't like me. Nobody really likes me. Those can be signs of depressed statements and that sad statements. Betsy, you must have seen me. Fine, if that's how you feel. Angry, very angry is another feeling that you one may have experienced, like Betsy. And then Lena, she was very preoccupied with something. I hope she's okay. So again, a little bit of concern, thinking about that other individual. Maybe it wasn't just all about me, it's really about that other person, but that feeling of concern really arose. So what did you notice? You may have noticed that the thoughts and that table really varies from person to person, and that different thoughts went through with different feelings. And it's exactly that same situation can call forth a wide range of thoughts and interpretations. And it is these, rather than the situation itself, that the way we feel. If we think someone is ignoring us because something is wrong, we feel upset, right? We personalize it. And that's human nature. But if we think someone is deliberately ignoring us, we certainly feel angry. We think that that person is preoccupied with their own worries, we feel concerned, and then so on. So lots of different emotions that we can, lots of thoughts, lots of feelings that come through the way. So we're often unaware of our own interpretation of the situation. So that's kind of an unusual exercise to do. We don't really do it. But mindfulness can really help us become really quite more aware and give us the freedom to respond differently. Our emotional reactions reflect that interpretation to give situations rather than the situation themselves. Okay. So just a mindful reminder and a mindful moment is that our emotional reactions reflect the interpretations we give the situation rather than the situation themselves. Our emotional reactions reflect the interpretations we give to the situation rather than the situation themselves. What are some thoughts and interpretations? Certainly our thoughts are interpretations, right? It feels almost philosophical. The conclusions we draw that are based on preconceived notions and prior experience and so on are shaped by a lot of different influences. And the fact that people have had such great interpretations means that our thoughts cannot be all accurate reflections of that really same reality. It cannot all be right. There will often be no simple one-on-one relationship between how things actually are and what we are thinking. Our thoughts are not facts, they are mental events. Okay. What about moods? A lot of people ask about our mood. I've noticed I interpret the same thing differently at different times. Why is that? We know our mood powerfully bias the way we see things, and in depressed mood, we tend to interpret events negatively. We think deliberately ignoring us rather than she might be more preoccupied with the troubles alone, our friend that we saw on our street, for example. And these are negative interpretations. She doesn't like me. What have I done? Makes us feel more sad, more depressed, almost hopeless at times, right? But this makes us also more likely to see things negatively, and then it starts to spiral, right? One thought produces a whole flood of the next thought. So similarly, if we're feeling very tense or anxious, our minds can see things and things can go wrong that threatens us or that have to be somehow justified. And these just make us more tense, more anxious, and more stressed. So this is a one mindful sitting meditation. So simply settle yourself into your seat again. Begin by taking that seat, by making yourself completely comfortable. If you're standing, trying to take a seat if you can. Most important thing is to feel where your body is touching the seat and your feet to the ground. And we're going to scan our body once again. Sense where your bottom is touching the seat. Simply sit up and stand straight but not stiff. And make sure your feet are completely touching the ground, connecting you to the earth. Your eyes are open, so take in the surroundings of where you are. And lower your gaze just slightly. Connect with your breath. Simply pay light attention to your breath as it comes and goes. Connect with the breath. Pay attention to your breath as it comes and it goes. And follow out the breath. At the end of the out breath, there will be gaps in the breathing, where the breathing is happening. And in that gap, you'll have natural awareness. You don't have to create this awareness. So simply follow the breath out. As thoughts arise, treat them as you would anything else that you've encountered. And use that noticing to bring you back to that out breath. Fight it out and out. When you are ready, come back to our virtual environment once again. So mind wandering certainly is not a mistake, not a failure. It just is what the mind does. And the aim of this next practice is not to prevent your mind from wandering, but to use the times when you notice that the mind has wandered to really develop your skills of recognizing what's happening without giving yourself too much pressure of time, and to really pausing long enough to know where your mind is in that moment, letting go of what was on your mind, and then finally gently and kindly bringing your attention back to the breath. So remember, we have our daily mini mindfulness actions. Certainly the breath work is the most important. It's really the core of mindfulness. The second is mindful walking. If you recall from last week, that's next time you're feeling overwhelmed, simply press your feet against the floor as you walk. You establish a strong physical foundation of balance to engage the five senses. I teach our oncology trainees, fellows in mindfulness work to resolve burnout, to address burnout. And I once had a fellow when we taught mindful walking that said, gosh, Dr. Fay, you know, I was really working well until I got paged when I was running to clinic. And then I felt I couldn't be mindful anymore. I said, that's okay. Most important thing is for you to restart the next day. And she now uses it as a practice. She's now a fully established faculty elsewhere, and you know, she uses it as one of her core strategies. So remember that mindful walking can be really powerful. It establishes that strong physical foundation, that balance to engage the five senses. Don't beat yourself up if you cannot practice that. Just resume the next day or that next moment later in the day. Don't be hard on yourself with judging. Become inquisitive. If you find yourself in a dispute with family or colleague, don't argue. Simply start by asking questions. Remember, by being inquisitive, we uncover new ways of surpassing roadblocks. And naming that mood. This helps us to externalize, get those emotions out. I feel angry is a great way of putting our feelings in perspective, especially those feelings that we identified before with thoughts. And this might be a tough exercise, but every hour, writing down one word, or at least 3 times a day, writing a one word that summarizes your current state of feeling of mind. And then at the end of the day, review your list, that even the worst feelings don't last. We have our cell phones now. You can easily put it in those notes, you know, just in the morning, how do you feel? At lunchtime, how do you feel? And dinner. And watch, you'll slowly start incorporating it more and more in the day. And at the end of the day, you'll see that it wasn't so bad, that you were able to surpass even the largest roadblocks that you encountered. And simply let it go before leaving the hospital, before going to sleep. Imagine a box, place the events inside, and then visualize it floating away. So remember our 3-minute breathing space. That minute 1, we notice what's there. We talked a lot about body sensations, our feelings, our emotions, and our thoughts. And in that minute 2, it's really to focus on the breath. We're going to pay attention to one spot, if you recall, rising and the fall of the abdomen and the nostrils. It's all about the breath, right? And that final minute 3, it's expanding our awareness, right? We're expanding from breath to body as a whole. And that mind wanders, simply bringing it back again and again. So let's try that now, our 3-minute breathing space. So simply begin by deliberately adopting just an erect, a dignified, straight back posture. So whether you're sitting in a chair, on the ground, wherever is most comfortable, close your eyes. Take about 1 minute to guide yourself through each of these steps. Step 1, we'll become aware of bringing our awareness to our inner experiences. And we'll ask, what are we experiencing right now? What thoughts are going through your mind? As best as you can, acknowledge the thoughts as mental events. Perhaps putting them into words. What are the feelings here? Turn toward any sense of emotional discomfort or unpleasant feelings. Acknowledge the presence. What body sensations are we here right now? Perhaps quickly scan your body and any sensations of tightness or bracing. And step 2, gathering. Let us redirect your attention to focus on the physical sensations of breathing itself. We move in close to that sense, breath in the abdomen. That feeling of that abdominal wall expanding as the breath comes in and falling back as that breath goes out. Follow the breath all the way you can, in and out, using the breathing to anchor the present self. If your mind wanders at any time, simply escort it back to the breath. If your mind wanders at any time, gently escort it back to the breath. And now we will expand that feel of your awareness around your breathing. So it includes a sense of the body as a whole, your posture and facial expression. If you feel any sensations of discomfort, tension, resistance, simply take your awareness there by focusing on the in-breath. Then breathe out those sensations, softening and opening that out breath. As best as you can, bring this expanded awareness to the next moment of your day. The breathing space is the way to step out of that automatic pilot and reconnect with our present moment. Remember, if you feel any tension or discomfort, take this awareness on the in-breath and then breathe out those sensations. Opening our out breath. That tension, we are breathing that tension out. We are breathing that discomfort out. The best that you can, simply bring this expanded awareness to the next moment of the day. Okay? So many folks ask, gosh, when should I do my 3 breathing spaces each day? And it's best to really choose times that are linked to events that are already firm fixtures in our daily routine. And we gave some examples earlier, but for example, if you take a breathing space as soon as you can, getting out of the bed, maybe just before you shower, after eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or when you take a regular break, for example, at work, on the bus when you go to and from work, or just when you're ready to go to bed. See if you can find times that work best for you. And the breathing space can be very useful, especially in the cancer setting, when you're going to the hospital, when you're settling in again for the waiting appointments, getting our x-rays, the chemotherapy, really, waiting to get chemotherapy in, and that's, really begin that chemotherapy experience with the 3 breathing spaces is really quite helpful for many folks. And recognize the fact it might be challenging at times. One time might feel very wonderful and healing and cathartic, and the next it might feel too much, or you feel like you may have failed. Remember, there's no judgments. It's just really important to go back to the exercise. And that. So really try that breathing space, especially in the cancer setting as well, and when you come home to recover, especially before going to sleep, before taking medications, for example. It's all about the awareness of where we feel. So aversion, right? These aversive thoughts sometimes that we might need to now especially take a moment to reflect on. What you do when things go wrong, when we're faced with unpleasant or difficult feelings. And outside the cancer setting, we'll just use the example of Jake. This morning, I noticed a sense of sadness arising. I gritted my teeth and I forced myself to carry on regardless. I could feel my body that's very much braced against this feeling. And another person, Rose, for example, might say, gosh, when I get anxious, I go over and over possible disastrous difficulties. What if, trying to find a way to stay in control. So the reactions of Jake and Rose may look quite different, but really deep down, they're all driven by the same underlying need to avoid what we're actually experiencing, unpleasant or painful feelings. It's tough. We don't want to broach those. Avoidance is a lot easier than really confronting our feelings and that, especially if they're painful or unpleasant. So this is, remember, it's a habit. It's deeply ingrained. It's something we all share, and that's what aversion is, okay? Aversion is really just avoidance. Think of it of avoiding painful, unpleasant feelings. And it's that drive to avoid, to escape, to get rid, to numb, to destroy the things that we experience as unpleasant is really very important. It is that power, that driven doing that keeps us entangled in our negative emotions like depression, anxiety, anger, and stress, and especially stress related to the cancer experience. So a couple of examples here that are and exercises that how do we identify aversion is to really freeze frame aversion. If we carefully investigate how we're experiencing these unpleasant feelings, we will see that there are two really crucial steps. That step one is that unpleasant feeling arises, and that step two, your mind reacts to that unpleasant feeling by trying in a way or another to avoid experiencing that feeling or the thing that caused the feeling. And these are two steps played out with that Jake and Rose example, okay? And we'll look at it this way just as a quick exercise. So for step one, Jake, he was feeling he was sad. And step two, his feeling was really resistance. And Rose, she was very anxious, and that developed into the feeling of worry, okay? So recognizing it's something that we all do, it's just really important for us to try to identify it when we can and not be so tough on ourselves. So aversion, a little bit more on that, is deliberately turning to faith, to investigate, to recognize those unpleasant feelings, your reactions to them. It's a powerful affirmation that you don't have to react to them. Instead, they can be held in our awareness, right? See it for what they are, that conscious response rather than automatic reaction. So isn't aversion natural? Doesn't it make sense that you want to just get rid or avoid things that are unpleasant? Yes, it's very natural. Recognize that, right? Especially in evolution, we can think about, animals, for example, when there's like in the forest or in the jungle, when there are dangerous things we encounter, and that aversion can save our lives, right? As animals do, so can we as well. The tigers, for example, human enemies, aversion can literally save our lives. That's why it's really hardwired, hardcore in our being. The problem comes when those unpleasant, difficult feelings are in that world. So the enemies of our own oppression and threatening, right? Our thoughts, our feelings, our sense of self. None of us can really run fast enough to get rid of these in our experiences. We just can't get rid of them by fighting them off or trying to destroy them. It's really hard to just do that. So how can we recognize aversion? Aversion takes two different forms from person to person. Mostly it's an overall feeling of not wanting. So not wanting to be, not wanting to have the experiences that we're having, not wanting to be that person we think we are. One way or another, we feel that things need to be different. This will in itself feel unpleasant rather than just acceptance. So, and number two, you can also recognize aversion as by a characteristic pattern of sensations in the body, right? It's often a sense away, a contraction, a resistance, a tightness, a bracing, or an intensity. And some people experience tension in the face or forehead. Others will feel it in the shoulders, braced in resistance, that sense of contraction, that intensity in the abdomen or chest, right? Hands may be clenched if you think about some of the folks that you know. All of these sensations themselves feel very unpleasant. But how does aversion towards our inner experience make things feel almost worse than aversion itself can be? It's really meant to, and that's why we really need to get and target that thing that's creating it, right? So when that thing is in itself an unpleasant feeling, aversion just adds to the unpleasantness around us. We feel worse and not better. But second, trying to get rid of that unpleasant thought or feeling will just keep us stuck to them even more firmly. The more we push, the harder they push back. We end up exhausting ourselves and creating more unpleasant feelings. And it's quite likely that focusing on negative thoughts or thinking back to the things were very bad for you, that really made you feel very low, very sad. And if that's true, now might be a good time to take that breathing space. Remember, it's all about breath work. It's really the core tool in mindfulness, not in judgmental breathing in through the body and the mind. And how can we see our negative mind states with less aversion? It's not just negative thoughts that we're taking personally. We react to it with aversion. We react to those negative states of mind, which the thoughts arise. So if you've been depressed, have you ever blamed yourself that you feel lethargic, that you feel fatigued because you have no energy, or perhaps you feel guilty or selfish when you notice you are no longer interested in making the time to be with friends or family. Perhaps you labeled yourself as stupid. Very harsh word, but sometimes we can be our own toughest critic because you couldn't concentrate on things, because you seem to have slowed down so much. What about the signs of personal failings or inadequacy? Can these actually be signs of depression, of sadness? What is it? And we know that clinicians, psychologists, and psychiatrists use a collection of features, lots of different symptoms to diagnose depression, but it's a vitally important message just to ourselves to recognize that feelings and changes are all common symptoms of depression, not signs necessarily, personal failings or inadequacy, right? It could be a sign also of anxiety as well. So we can see these negative states of mind for what they really are. We can take them less personally. We will react with less aversion, recognizing that if we look at these negative states of mind for what they are, we take them less personally. We react with less aversion. We get a chance to act in ways that will let those states of mind pass rather than get us stuck even deeper in them. So a gentle reminder for mindfulness: how do you respond to these ideas? How are they relevant to you? Do they seem to fit your own experience? You might make a note of your thoughts. And recognizing the ABC of stop. Remember, we're stopping for awareness in our daily lives. We're stopping for beauty. We're stopping for compassion, especially our own self-compassion. Again, we can be our toughest critics. And let us remember that what you do affects how you feel. It's very important that you can change how you feel by changing what you do. And part of that is targeting our thoughts. So remember, these are some useful mindful tips. By becoming more mindful of how we proceed through our days, that's truly the antidote to feeling like we're running in circles. It's very easy to be on that autopilot in your life. That's going to be a continual reminder in these sessions. Procrastinating or not, getting enough sleep or exercise, right? That's important. Prioritizing yourself. Mindfulness is about being more present, more aware of your behavior in each moment. It can help you change your habits that are no longer serving you. So let's begin again with another mindful breath exercise. So simply sit comfortably with your eyes closed, with your back reasonably straight. And again, direct your attention to your breathing. When thoughts, emotions, physical feelings, and external sounds occur, simply accept them, note them, give them the space to come and go without judging, without getting involved in them. And when you notice that your attention has drifted off and becoming more caught up in these thoughts or feelings, again, simply note that attention has drifted, but gently bring that attention back to your breathing. Make note of that thought, but bring back the attention back to your breathing. It is okay and natural for these thoughts to arise and for our attention to follow them. No matter how many times this happens, keep bringing your attention back to your breathing. Simply bring your attention back to your breathing. And when you are ready, please return to our virtual meeting space here. Once again, what you do affects how you feel. But again, the most important is that you can change how you feel by changing what you do. No judgment, only attention and awareness and self-compassion. That is key. So for the next week, would kindly ask you to practice the exercises that we learned here today. For 6 out of the next 7 days, try the sitting meditation. You could try to do the sitting meditation 1, 3, and 5, or that mindful walking, or what we call mindful movement. I didn't go into all the mindful movement exercises because with cancer, we know sometimes there are certain issues, but most of us can do mindful walking or mindful sitting. So try doing mindful walking on 2, 4, and 6. The 3-minute breathing space, do that regularly during the course of the day. The additional breathing spaces whenever you need. And again, revert to mindful walking. Our recommended reading is here. You will get the top workbook today. And these are the mindfulness audio recordings. This is a web page. I'll send it to Ross later today to make sure that you have the direct link. These are MP3 files from my former mindfulness teacher, Dr. Richard Sears, who was the bodyguard to the Dalai Lama and a psychologist. So if anyone can be any Zen and mindful, it's got to be him. So, and I'm sure we can learn from him. So thank you so much. Are there